forest has always been my sanctuary, a place where the chaos of the world falls away, replaced by the rhythm of wind through leaves and the soft crunch of earth beneath boots. My father taught me this when I was 12, guiding me through the dense woods outside Peoria, Illinois, where dawn light filtered through morning mist and deer moved like ghosts among the trees. He was a man of few words, my father, his lessons delivered in the silence of a hunter's patience, his calloused hands pointing to tracks in the mud or the faint outline of a buck against the horizon. By 16, I could navigate a mixed hardwood forest with the ease of a predator, field dress a kill with surgical precision, and move through underbrush quieter than the squirrels skittering overhead. While my peers lost themselves in video games or loitered in mall parking lots, I studied the language of the wild, animal prints, wind patterns, the subtle shift of a forest coming alive or falling still. The other boys called me strange. I didn't care. The woods were my truth, a place where I was whole, tethered to something ancient and unyielding. College at the University of Illinois felt like a detour, a practical step toward a mechanical engineering degree that promised stability. But my heart remained in the wild, my weekends spent seeking out whatever scraps of nature I could find within driving distance of Urbana-Champaign. Those 4 years were a means to an end, a bridge to a life where I could balance a career with the wilderness that defined me. When I landed a job at Midwest Engineering Associates in Springfield, Missouri, it wasn't the promise of advancement or a steady paycheck that sealed the deal. It was the Ozarks, those rolling, untamed hills that called to me like a second home. 8 years later, I was thriving. My knack for spotting flaws in designs before they became costly errors earned me respect at work, and I climbed the ranks to head the commercial development division. Success came with a price. Long hours, relentless client calls, and deadlines that chained me to my desk past midnight. It was during a hotel renovation project that I met Elena, an interior designer with amber eyes and a meticulousness that rivaled my own. Her confidence, the way she presented her concepts with precision and passion, drew me in. Within 18 months, we were married, settling into a quiet Springfield suburb with a house that promised a future we hadn't yet planned. Children, perhaps, though we hadn't discussed it. Elena didn't share my love for the outdoors. Raised in Chicago, she saw nature as a curated experience, something confined to manicured parks with paved paths. Early in our relationship, she humored me with a few hikes, but her discomfort was palpable. Her constant checks for ticks, the tight smile that never reached her eyes. "I don't get what you see out there," she said after one mosquito-plagued outing. "We have a beautiful home, all the comforts anyone could want. Why spend your weekend dirty and exhausted?" I tried to explain the connection, the way the forest made me feel part of something vast and eternal, but my words stumbled, inadequate. So we settled into an unspoken compromise. My wilderness trips became solo ventures, while our shared life revolved around home improvements, dinners with friends, and occasional city escapes. It worked, mostly, but without regular time in the woods, something vital in me began to wither, like a plant starved of light. I made it a priority to reclaim that part of myself. One weekend a month, sometimes 2 in the winter when work slowed, I'd escape to the Ozarks for a day of hiking, fishing, or simply sitting in the silence of the trees. Elena never complained, though I'd catch a flicker of concern when I checked my revolver before leaving. "You really think you need that?" she asked the first time she saw me holster the .38. "Probably not," I admitted, securing the gun at my hip. "But in remote areas, you prepare for anything." My father's lessons echoed in that habit. Always be ready, always anticipate the unexpected. The last week of November 2025 was a crucible. A miscalculation in a bid, not my department's error, cost us a major contract, plunging the office into chaos. Days of damage control meetings and toxic office politics left me hollowed out, my thoughts jagged and restless. By Friday evening, I was a husk, desperate for the solace only the wilderness could provide. After a quiet dinner with Elena, I retreated to my home office, scrolling through hiking forums for a trail that could strip away the weight of the week. The usual paths near Springfield wouldn't suffice. I needed something remote, untouched. On an Ozark hiking site, I found a thread about a secluded 7-mile loop in Mark Twain National Forest, 2 hours southeast of Springfield. Hardly ever see another soul out there, one user wrote. Remote enough to feel like you've left civilization behind. The photos showed white diamond blazes marking a path through dense oak and hickory, with ridgeline views and a quiet that promised solitude. Perfect. I mapped the drive, 2 hours to the trailhead. If I left at dawn, I'd be hiking by sunrise, finishing the loop by early afternoon and home for dinner. Elena had lunch plans with friends, so the timing aligned. That night, I packed with ritualistic precision in our spare room. A day pack with 3 liters of water, protein bars, beef jerky, a first aid kit, a compass, a paper map, a headlamp, extra batteries, and an emergency blanket. My hunting knife went into its leather sheath, and I checked my .38 Smith & Wesson revolver, loading 5 rounds and securing it in its holster. Missouri's concealed carry laws permitted it, and in the wild, it was a reassurance against both animal and human threats. I laid out my clothes: moisture-wicking base layers, a flannel shirt, an insulated vest, a waterproof jacket, thick socks, and broken-in boots. The forecast promised low 40s, cold enough to deter casual hikers, ideal for someone seeking isolation. Elena leaned against the doorframe as I packed, her smile soft but tinged with amusement. Got everything you need to survive the apocalypse? She teased. Just the essentials, I replied, returning her smile. It's a new trail I found online. I'll be back for dinner. She crossed the room and kissed me lightly. Be careful out there. Okay? Cell reception spotty in those hills. Always am, I promised. I'll text when I'm headed back. Sleep eluded me that night, my mind caught between anticipation and lingering work stress. By 4:30 a.m., I gave up, showering and dressing in the dark. Downstairs, I brewed a thermos of coffee and grabbed a banana for the drive. Before leaving, I paused in our bedroom doorway, watching Elena sleep, her dark hair fanned across the pillow, her breathing soft and steady. A protective instinct stirred in me, and I leaned down to kiss her forehead. I love you, I whispered, knowing she wouldn't hear. The cold bit at my lungs as I stepped outside, my breath visible in the pre-dawn chill. I loaded my gear into my Ford F-150, scraped frost from the windshield, and drove off, the neighborhood silent except for a few glowing porch lights. The 2-hour drive southeast on Highway 60 was meditative, classic rock playing softly as my headlights cut through the darkness. The roads grew narrower, more rural, until I reached the Forest Access Road, a bumpy dirt path my truck handled with ease. The sky shifted from black to deep blue as I pulled into the trailhead parking area, a wide spot in the road with space for half a dozen vehicles. Mine was the only one there. I killed the engine, listening to it cool and the first bird stir. My watch read 6:45 a.m. Perfect timing for a sunrise hike. I shouldered my pack, adjusted my belt for easy access to my knife and revolver, and locked the truck. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, crisp and clean. A wooden sign at the trailhead displayed a carved map of the loop and basic rules. I snapped a photo with my phone, double-checking my paper map, and followed the white diamond blazes into the forest, unaware that this ordinary morning would unravel everything I thought I knew. The trail was everything I'd hoped for: quiet, empty, and alive with the subtle pulse of the wilderness. November meant no crowds, no blaring music, just the crunch of frosty leaves underfoot and the occasional chirp of birds. The path wound through oak and hickory, their bare branches revealing patches of sky that would have been hidden in summer. I kept a steady pace, my breathing syncing with my steps. About a mile in, the trail climbed toward a ridge, the incline gentle but enough to warm me. I unzipped my jacket, savoring the view at the top. Rolling hills painted in autumn's browns and reds, 2 hawks circling lazily overhead. I watched them until they vanished behind a distant ridge, then studied the ground, fresh deer tracks, likely a doe and fawn, and turkey scratches where they'd foraged for acorns. My father's lessons ran through my mind. Animal signs weren't just curiosities. They were the forest's pulse, revealing where life flowed and where danger might lurk. An hour in, I reached a small valley with a creek gurgling over smooth stones. I sat on a fallen log, sipping water and refilling my bottle from my reservoir. The cold air had made me thirstier than expected. Then it hit me. A stench so foul it made me recoil, like sewage and rot fused with something chemical unnatural. It wasn't the earthy decay of a dead animal. It was too intense, too wrong. Covering my nose with my sleeve, I scanned the area, expecting a carcass. A deer, perhaps, wounded by a hunter and left to rot. But the leaves were undisturbed, no blood or bones in sight. I circled the creek for 10 minutes, finding nothing to explain the odor. The smell stung my eyes, and I gave up, returning to the trail. It faded after a quarter mile, and I dismissed it as a quirk of the woods, strange, but not worth dwelling on. The trail thickened, then opened at the base of a limestone cliff, its pale face rising 30 feet, etched with water-worn patterns like ripples and small caves. The late morning light made the stone glow, and I snapped photos, thinking Elena might draw inspiration from the textures for her designs. My GPS showed I was halfway through the loop, on pace to finish by early afternoon. As I pocketed my phone, a snap echoed from deeper in the forest, followed by rustling. Something heavy moving through the brush, maybe 50 yards off. I froze, listening. Another snap, then more movement. A deer, I thought, or perhaps a turkey. Black bears were rare in this part of Missouri, and they typically avoided humans. When the sounds didn't repeat, I shrugged and continued, the trail narrowing as it descended into a ravine. The descent demanded focus, roots and loose stones making the path treacherous. At the bottom, a seasonal creek held only stagnant pools, its banks slick with mud. I checked my map, confirming the climb out would mark the trail's midpoint. The ascent was grueling, my breath heavy as I paused twice to rest. The forest felt denser here, the trees crowding closer, casting deep shadows despite the late morning sun. At the ridge, a weathered sign marked the halfway point, 3.5 miles. I'd been hiking for just under 2 hours. I set my pack against the signpost, rolling my shoulders to ease the tension. The view was less striking than before, just endless trees, their bare branches weaving a lattice against the sky. Then the stench returned, worse than before, a suffocating wave of rot and chemicals that made me gag. I pulled my jacket collar over my nose, but it barely helped. The odor seemed to come from everywhere, with no source in sight. No carcass, no stagnant water, nothing. Worse, the forest had gone silent. No birds, no squirrels, no hum of insects. The absence was a physical weight, pressing against my instincts. My hand drifted to my revolver, fingers brushing the grip. Years of hunting had honed that prickle at the back of my neck, the sense of being watched. I turned slowly, scanning the tree line. A branch cracked behind me, 30 yards down the trail I just climbed. Then another, heavier, followed by the unmistakable sound of something large moving through the brush. My mind raced through possibilities. A black bear, unlikely but possible. A feral hog, increasingly common in these parts. Both could be dangerous if startled. I drew the .38, keeping it pointed at the ground. "Hey!" I called, my voice sharp in the silence. "Make some noise out there." Most animals would retreat at the sound of a human. No response, just more movement, circling to my left toward the trail's continuation. The stench intensified, choking, unnatural. Bears didn't smell like this, and they didn't circle like predators stalking prey. "I'm armed," I shouted, considering the slim chance this was a person. "Identify yourself." The movement grew heavier, branches snapping with intent, as if whatever was out there wanted me to know it was coming. I slung my pack over one shoulder, keeping my right hand on the revolver, and moved quickly down the trail. Every few steps, I glanced back, expecting to see something emerge. The sounds followed, keeping pace just out of sight. My boot caught on a root, and I stumbled, catching myself before falling. In that moment, the pursuit surged, as if sensing weakness. I spun, revolver raised, aiming at an empty trail. The stench was overwhelming, thick enough to taste. My training kicked in, I jogged forward, the .38 ready, thumb on the hammer. 5 rounds, I reminded myself. 5 chances. The trail curved along the ridge, and I spotted a fork ahead, marked by another sign. Loop continuation or return to the trailhead, both 3.5 miles. Completing the loop no longer felt wise. Something was hunting me, something that didn't behave like any animal I knew. I took the left fork toward the parking area, and the pursuit stopped abruptly. The silence was worse than the noise, a void that screamed wrongness. The stench lingered, heavy as fog. I kept moving, listening, the revolver steady in my hand. 50 yards later, the sounds returned. Not just movement, but crashing, unhidden, deliberate. Branches snapped, leaves crunched under a weight far heavier than a deer or bear. My pulse spiked, adrenaline flooding my system. I wasn't being followed. I was being hunted. I broke into a run, abandoning stealth, my boots pounding the dirt. The crashing accelerated, matching my pace, sometimes directly behind, sometimes cutting through the forest to my left or right. The stench grew unbearable, coating my throat. I vaulted over a fallen oak, hoping it would slow my pursuer, but the sounds resumed almost immediately, louder, faster. The trail narrowed around a limestone outcropping, and I slowed just enough to avoid slipping. Then I saw it, 30 yards ahead, a tall, dark figure half hidden behind a massive oak, watching me. It wasn't human. Too tall, too still, its form wrong in ways my brain struggled to process. I froze, raising the revolver, sights aligned with where its chest would be if it stepped out. "Who's there?" I called, my voice thin. "Identify yourself." No response, just a slight tilt of its head, unnatural, predatory. "I'm armed," I shouted. "Step out where I can see you." Slowly, it emerged, and my reality shattered. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, its limbs impossibly long and thin, like branches stretched to breaking. Its skin was pale, taut over a skeletal frame, as if shrink-wrapped to bone. No clothes, no gear, just raw, unnatural flesh. Its face was a nightmare. Deep-set eyes that absorbed light, hollow and endless, above a mouth too wide, lined with jagged, shark-like teeth. Cocked its head at an impossible angle, sizing me up. "What the fuck?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice cracking. "I will shoot." It straightened, took a step forward, its movement fluid yet wrong, like a spider in reverse. I fired twice, the shots shattering the silence, the recoil familiar against my wrists. Both rounds hit center mass. I was certain, my training flawless at that range. The creature didn't react. No stagger, no blood, just those hollow eyes locked on me. "No," I said, disbelief drowning fear. "That's not possible." It inhaled deeply, its grotesque mouth opening wider, and unleashed a screech, high-pitched, discordant, a sound that clawed at my skull, blurring my vision and setting my teeth on edge. I covered my ears, nearly dropping the revolver, the pain like needles in my brain. When the sound stopped, it crouched, its long arms dangling, fingers brushing the ground. It was preparing to charge. I turned and ran, the revolver useless in my hand. Glancing back was a mistake. It moved on all fours, limbs bending backward and sideways, a grotesque parody of motion, closing the gap with terrifying speed. I pushed harder, branches whipping my face, my lungs burning. The trail descended into a dry creek bed, steep and treacherous. I slid down, splashing through stagnant puddles, then scrambled up the opposite bank, grabbing roots and rocks. The creature's pursuit paused at the creek, then resumed, faster, relentless. 3/4 up the bank, my boots slipped on loose gravel. My ankle rolled, and in that moment something sharp, impossibly sharp, sliced across the backs of both legs, just above the knees. Not claws, but a blade-like force, cold and precise, cutting through fabric, skin, and deeper. Pain erupted, my legs collapsing. I fell forward, the revolver flying from my hand as my head struck a rock. Light burst behind my eyes, then darkness swallowed me. the stench of rot and chemicals filling my lungs. Cold woke me, bone deep and merciless. I lay face down, the sky darkening through bare branches. My legs screamed with pain, and I stifled a cry as I looked down. My pants were soaked with blood, both legs bent at wrong angles, shattered. The forest was silent, the creature gone, but its stench lingered, weaker but unmistakable. My watch read 2:37 p.m. I'd been out for over an hour. My phone had no service, and the trailhead was at least 2 miles away. With broken legs, a concussion, and temperatures dropping, survival seemed impossible. Yet I had to try. I found my revolver in the dirt, 2 rounds left, and tucked it into my waistband. My pack held water, protein bars, a space blanket, a flashlight, and first aid supplies, useless for injuries this severe. Rolling onto my stomach sent agony through my legs, but I bit down on my sleeve and dragged myself forward, elbows digging into the dirt. Each inch was torture, my shattered legs trailing uselessly. I focused on the white diamond blazes, breaking the distance into small, achievable goals. The sun sank, the forest darkening. My world narrowed to pain, movement, and the next marker. By 4:30 p.m., the woods were nearly black under the canopy. I held my flashlight in my teeth, its beam catching the diamond blazes. Shivering uncontrollably, I wrapped the space blanket around my shoulders, its crinkling loud in the silence. The trail widened slightly, my GPS showing less than a mile to the trailhead. Pain became a living thing, screaming with every movement. At 9 p.m., I stopped to eat a protein bar and drink, my hands shaking from cold, blood loss, and exhaustion. The flashlight dimmed, batteries failing, but I lacked the dexterity to replace them. Midnight brought a surreal landscape of black and silver, moonlight filtering through branches. The trailhead sign appeared in my dying beam, and tears stung my eyes. The final 100 yards over gravel tore at my hands and elbows, each piece like broken glass. I reached my truck, pulling myself up to the door handle, nearly fainting from the effort. Lifting my ruined legs into the cab was a new kind of hell, but I managed, slamming the door and locking it. The keys shook in my numb fingers as I started the engine, heat pouring from the vents. I sat, trembling, as warmth seeped into me. Driving with broken legs was a nightmare. I used my right hand to press the gas pedal, steering with my left, each bump sending pain through my body. The 20-mile forest road took over an hour, my speed barely reaching 15 miles per hour. On the highway to Rolla, I fought to stay conscious, rolling down the window to let cold air keep me alert. At a gas station on Rolla's outskirts, I leaned on the horn until the attendant appeared. Darkness closed in as he approached, my last thought one of relief. Someone had found me. I woke in Phelps County Regional Hospital, machines beeping, my legs in casts, and 4 in my arm. Elena's tear-streaked face hovered above me, her hand gripping mine. "You're okay," she whispered. Dr. Reynolds, a tired-eyed man, listed my injuries. Multiple fractures, severe lacerations, hypothermia, concussion. "What attacked you?" he asked. I described the creature. Its height, its pale skin, those hollow eyes, the shark-like mouth. His expression shifted to skepticism, suggesting hallucinations from the concussion. The police were no better, proposing a bear despite my insistence. They promised to investigate, but I knew they'd find nothing. No blood, no casings, no trace of the thing. Elena stayed by my side, but doubt shadowed her eyes. "You lost a lot of blood," she said gently. "Your mind might have." I didn't argue. What could I say? The creature had left no evidence, its attack perfectly deniable. 3 days later, I was discharged with a diagnosis of possible large predator attack. The wilderness, once my refuge, was now a place of dread. The surgeon said I might walk again with therapy, but hiking was over. That was fine. I never wanted to see a trail again. Something impossible had hunted me, toyed with me, and let me live. The forest had shown its true face, and I'd carry that truth forever.